Hello and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Eric May, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for our next live presentation from IsoEnergy Ltd. Before we introduce our speaker, a few points to note. Please submit your questions in the question box to the left of the slides. If you're interested in scheduling a meeting with IsoEnergy, please click on the Meetings tab found in the left navigation bar. You'll be able to view the company's availability and submit a meeting request. On a final note, all of today's presentations will be recorded and available for 24/7 replay. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Tim Gabruch, President, CEO, and Director of IsoEnergy Ltd, which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the symbol ISENF and on the TSXV under the symbol ISO. Welcome, Tim.
Eric, thanks very much for having us. I really appreciate it, and excited to be here to talk a little bit about IsoEnergy. Maybe we'll just get right into it then, and slip first to the disclaimer slide. Of course, there's potential to be forward-looking statements in here, so everybody please be aware of that, and just look to our website for any follow-up information that you might need. For those of you that are not familiar with IsoEnergy, we were formed back in 2016, and we are a uranium exploration development company located in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, really in the heart of the uranium world. Our properties are in the northern Saskatchewan Athabasca Basin. We were formed in 2016 as a spin out of a company called NextGen Energy, who many of you might know. It's got a terrific world-class, in fact, the largest undeveloped resource in the world with the Arrow project, and that's in the western side of the Athabasca Basin. Back in 2016, they decided to spin out 5 of their eastern Athabasca properties into IsoEnergy. Really quite an amazing story, actually, in a lot of ways. It was a great time to do it, but not for all the, maybe some of the typical reasons. It was actually, if you look at one of the charts I put up on the slide here, it was really at the bottom of the uranium market. So a very difficult time in the industry and in the uranium market at the bottom, but really a great time to set up a company if what you're looking to do is pick up properties and really invest in the industry that you believe in. So they put in 5 properties. It was a good time with a very strong technical and commercial team to build on those 5 properties and in fact get access to a lot more of a land position in the basin, which I'll get more into. So the strategy at the time was to stake, as I said, and acquire as much property as we could. Given that it was the bottom of the market, there was a lot of very good property that had come open because, frankly, there was not a lot of investment going on in the nuclear industry at that time back in 2016, especially for those that do follow the industry. That really was the bottom of the market. So from those 5 properties, we now have more than 20 very high quality properties in the Athabasca Basin. Our flagship asset is the Larocque property, and that's home to the Hurricane Zone, which is now the world's highest grade uranium deposit. We also have a number of other properties, and I'll talk more about our strategy as we've kind of advanced the Hurricane deposit. But what is the strategy with some of the other properties that we have in the basin, such as our Geiger, Collins Bay, Hawk, Evergreen that you see on slide, and quite a few others. The first thing I do want to talk about, though, is really what is at the core of our company, and that's the Hurricane deposit. And back in July, we put out an initial mineral resource for that deposit. The property itself was one that we acquired back in 2018. It wasn't part of the original spun out properties. We purchased that from Cameco in 2018. It's 100% owned by IsoEnergy. In July of that year, just a couple months after acquiring it, we put one drill hole in it at the end of a summer program. Did hit some mineralization, and that really became the basis for most of the work of the company over the next 6 drill programs, really through this year. On the left there, you just see some of the highlights of some of the drilling that we've done over the period, and what we did find is that we struck some of the just incredibly high grade uranium mineralization throughout that ore body, and so really on par with some of the best highest grade deposits in the basin. This is a drawing schematic of the ore body itself. So what we have is almost 50 million pounds, 48.6 million pounds at an average grade of 34.5%. So just incredibly high grade uranium deposit, kind of, again, on par with some of the best grades that have come out of the Athabasca Basin, which, for those of you that follow the uranium sector, know that, Saskatchewan is home to incredibly high grades, on par with 100 times the world average of other deposits around the globe. So almost 50 million pounds, of which 44 million pounds of that is over 50%, 52.1%. So just incredibly high grades. You can see the yellow and then the brighter orange part of the deposit. That's the high grade zone of the deposit. It's actually a very small footprint at those grades. You don't cover a lot of ground to make up 50 million pounds. Very small. It's an unconformity hosted deposit, sitting predominantly in the unstructured sandstone on top of the basement rock in the basin. So you also see that line, that blue line with the sort of the tan on the other side. That really is just a property border. So we've got a kind of an interesting situation there where we did find the deposit, really tracked it to the border. So some of the highest grade parts of the deposit are right along the border, and that's a border with a property called Dawn Lake. We don't own that property. That's a Cameco and Orano owned property that's on the other side of the border. So it doesn't, I'm not a geologist, but it doesn't take one to understand that there is something on the other side of the border, and over time that will be another story that we don't direct, but that the Cameco Orano folks, as they decide to do any exploration on the other side, will it will certainly unfold what is the remaining story on the other side. Just continuing to move on here. This is just another schematic of the deposit, just to give you a sense of how it's set up, and very consistent with a lot of other unconformity hosted deposits in the basin. You've got that little cross section that I've circled on the left, and the arrow to the right there. It really, what you have is a very thin layer, kind of almost a pancake like layer of uranium sitting again on the basement rock, the grade of the bottom, but the ore body itself sitting in that unconsolidated or unstructured sandstone, which is really consistent with a lot of other deposits in the basin. Cigar Lake, McArthur River unconformity hosted. Denison, if you know that name, they're developing a Phoenix deposit, which is very similar in type to this. So very recognizable in the basin as a type of geology that's been mined in the past. So this cross section here and the drilling, like I said, has really defined an exceptionally high grade zone, really overlying the unconformity between the basement rock and the Athabasca sandstone. Hurricane, as you can imagine, with a deposit like this at these high grades, there's a lot of strategic advantages to this deposit. First, again, is just the fact that it's incredibly high grade, which provides a lot of benefits. It makes for a very small footprint, like I said before, and just a lot of provides a lot of flexibility, or a lot of opportunity to determine exactly how you can mine this economically, and given the footprint, the size of it, obviously that's a real benefit. It's also quite shallow. The schematic or the drawing to the bottom just kind of gives you a sense of where it sits within a long laundry list of great projects in the Athabasca Basin as far as depth. So quite shallow, 325 meters. More shallow than Cigar and McArthur. Very successful. Some of the highest grade, highest value uranium mines in the world. Phoenix, like I said, if you know Denison, it's a little bit shallower than that. So it's only to say that it doesn't, the depth of the deposit does not provide any impediments, to extracting that deposit down the road. Infrastructure, when NextGen spun out these properties on the eastern Athabasca, it was for a reason. The eastern Athabasca itself is really the home of all these deposits and ore bodies that have been mined. So Key Lake, Rabbit Lake, McArthur River, Cigar Lake. So it's got the highest amount of, or the greatest amount of infrastructure in this part of the world. So it's got roads, it's got power, and we're really in the heart of that. So if you can find a deposit like this, and you can find it in the eastern Athabasca, it really is an advantage. We're also only 40 kilometers from Orano's existing McLean Lake mill. So that's a mill that currently mills all of the Cigar Lake ore. It does have excess capacity, and Cigar Lake doesn't last forever. So there is the potential for opportunities to have this ore body developed and mined near an existing mill, and the potential to strike arrangements with Orano down the road potentially. So anyways, it's just to say that it's near all of this infrastructure. There's no water at surface. For those of you that have been up to northern Saskatchewan, you'll know that there is a lot of water on surface, a lot of lakes and trees. And so if you find a deposit like this and it doesn't have water cover, it's an advantage, because it's something that another impediment that you don't have to deal with. Also, innovation. There's really a history of constant innovation in the basin. So some of the ore bodies, McArthur, Cigar, that have been developed in the past, they've used a lot of innovation, whether it's freeze technology or raise boring, jet boring to mine those deposits. There's a lot of work going on in the basin right now to look at how do you mine some of these what are deemed to be a little bit smaller deposits in the basin, not the 300 million pound elephants, but some of the smaller ones. Denison is looking at ISR, in situ recovery, in the basin. Orano's been looking at a Sabre technology, sort of a from surface directional drilling technique. That these are techniques that don't require underground development, and so can potentially be more economic for a deposit like this. So there's a lot of work that's been going on in past months and years that we'll look to leverage as we take next steps on how to advance Hurricane. Also, this border with Cameco Orano has the potential to be an advantage. We don't know what's on the other side. If it's a very small amount of uranium, that just gives us more of a runway to develop it on our own. If drilling does take place on that side, which we believe it will be by Cameco and Orano, then and there's a significant portion of a deposit on the other side, then obviously that opens the door to other ways to look at moving forward and developing that project. Also, probably one of the biggest advantages, frankly, is jurisdiction. The geopolitical landscape has really made Saskatchewan and uranium deposits like this Hurricane deposit even more important. So, utilities, power companies around the world that buy uranium have always looked to Saskatchewan as a stable jurisdiction politically, and in just proximity to places like the U.S., which has the largest amount of nuclear reactors. It's always been a real positive. But today, with everything going on in Russia, Ukraine, those types of instability, with a lot of uranium still coming from that part of the world, jurisdictions like Saskatchewan, even the U.S., Australia, those are the jurisdictions that people are going to look to more and more going down the road, frankly, as stable geopolitical jurisdictions to purchase uranium from. So I think that bodes well for a deposit like Hurricane down the road. I'll just mention this. It's again, an incredible deposit, and one other, just key point to note is really the insensitivity to cutoff grade. So, it's highly insensitive. Like I said, there's, basically 94% of the contained metal within this deposit is at a cutoff grade of 10%. So we used a cutoff grade of 1% for our study, which is really, the same that was used for Cigar Lake in their 2016 mineral resource. But you can really go to 10% cutoff grade and have very little impact on losing, the resource. So having this kind of insensitivity to cutoff grade really is quite unique and really amazing part of the deposit. This is just the company we used to develop the initial resource. This company named SLR, just a very well-known, very experienced group within the mining community, work on a lot of different commodities and certainly a lot of other uranium projects. So just to note the process we went through, very stringent to get to the resource that we now have. That's really Hurricane in a bit of the 25-cent tour. And as we move forward, we've certainly spent a lot of the time over the last number of years working on the delineation of that deposit, finding out exactly what we have there. So at the expense of some of the other properties we have, of course. So we focused on that. We've now got a resource, and now we're looking, ahead to, okay, what are the next steps with Hurricane? So that's one part of the work we're doing. The other part is the exploration of all these other great high quality projects that we've put together over the last number of years. So we have started to, leverage and deploy the great exploration team that we have, and we've got a great team of geologists. And over the last couple of years, we've been doing obviously finishing up the delineation work on Hurricane, but then moving over to some of the other great properties. And so over the last, winter, summer programs, we've done, thousands of meters of drilling. Some of those, again, to finish up on Hurricane, but we've started moving out and doing more drilling on other properties. This summer, for instance, we just finished a 7,000 meter drill program on the Rockies still, but just off-site of Hurricane. Some of it just a little bit to the east, a couple of kilometers from Hurricane, but also it's a really big property. So also quite a bit of work out to the far east of that property and to the north. We've also done some work on our Geiger property that we've liked since our early days of the company, just haven't had the resources to do work on it as we delineated Hurricane. And we did some interesting work on a property called Trident this summer as well. That's really turning out well. The other thing we've been doing a lot of is a lot of geophysical surveying, really to start lining up all these other properties for future work. A lot of these are early stage, so we're setting up targets and really trying to get in sort of these targets, not just for the next drill programs, the winter coming up, but also for the summer and the follow-up winter. So several drill programs in advance, trying to really line up that work. Just taking a quick look at the Rockies from this past summer, we drilled another 6 holes here. Like I said, just right to the east of Hurricane by a couple kilometers. We went way out to the far east of that property, which is several kilometers. So we went out just kind of drilled one more hole at the far east tip just to kind of close off some of the work we've been doing to see, exploring an area that we hadn't done before. And then maybe the most exciting part of that property still to come is up to the north in that Kernahan trend you see on the chart. We put a couple more holes in there this summer, a couple holes for the first time this summer. Intersected some broad zone of variable alteration and really have some great work to do to kind of understand some of the geochemistry that's coming back, but there's certainly planning underway to follow up on those results in 2023, which we're quite excited about. We also did some more work on our Geiger property. We did some drilling last summer, followed it up with some geophysical work, and then went into this Q23 and Q48 areas that you see here. We've drilled a few more holes, and we're our geochemical results are pending, but we'll use that information to continue to plan a follow-up program on that property as well. Trident's another interesting one. It's down a little bit to the southeast of the basin, and it's just outside the Athabasca sandstone coverage. So it's officially kind of outside the basin, but right on the edge. So this is a property that we've started doing a little bit of drilling on, and it's really directly into the basement rock there, which is, really, if you can find a deposit in the basement rock, also very exciting because you've got some very consistent, stable ground in order to do development on. So, we had some successful first pass drilling. We intersected some prospective graphitic structures, and we're going to have some additional geophysical surveying planned for 2023 to prioritize where we want to look in this property next. That's in addition to all the drilling that we did this summer. Like I said, we've been doing a lot of geophysical work. We did quite a bit of Airborne this summer on these 5 properties that you see in blue: Evergreen, Spruce, East Rim, Edge, and Full Moon. Really, we just want to improve our knowledge of all these properties geologically, and then use that information to to really determine where the next drill programs are going to go. So we've got a lot of work left to do on many of these properties, and we're excited to be able to turn our team and our resources to some of these other properties that have been sitting kind of on the sidelines, like I said, for some years. That is really the overview of the work. Really, again, two-pronged. Continue to take some initial steps to advance Hurricane. At the same time, move on to some of these other exploration properties that have been in the portfolio and continue to leverage those. And really, it's all within the scope of for those of you that are following the market, an excellent uranium market. And I won't, for the sake of time, go into a lot of detail here, but basically, just this slide just kind of speaks to the fact that, frankly, the supply demand fundamentals continue to be great. They continue to be some of the best we've ever seen in the industry. The supply from primary sources is much lower than the annual demand, so we continue to eat away at inventories and excess inventories that are in the market. But those have taken a big hit over the last decade, as we had a very subdued market over the last little while, where a lot of production came off, prices were low, and so a lot of inventories have been eaten into, and so we do know that with those inventories coming to an end, or a lot of the overhang gone, certainly there's been long-term supply sources gone through this period. Rio Tinto's or ERA's Ranger, Orano's Cominac, MacArthur was shut down. It's now starting to come back on, but there's a lot of new primary supply that will be needed. I mentioned it really briefly before. The geopolitical situation around nuclear has really forced a rethink on nuclear energy in general. So, Russia invading Ukraine, Russia continues to be a big supplier of uranium and nuclear fuel in general to the West. But there's a lot of rethinking about how a lot of these countries want to rely on Russia going forward. So there's big shifts coming in where that supply is going to be coming from, not only on the uranium side, but on other pieces of the nuclear fuel cycle going forward. And there's just a lot of concern about, how much uranium, especially in the US and Europe, do we want coming from, Kazakhstan, or relying on Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, other parts of the world that may or may not be quite as stable as other jurisdictions. So that piece is all playing out, and of course, at the same time, we see a renewed acceptance of nuclear, both as a necessary tool to fight climate change, and you see that people and countries and jurisdictions rethinking their nuclear plans. Whether it's California, Germany, Michigan just decided to restart a plant they had already shut down. The EU has backed nuclear as with a green label. It's become part of the EU taxonomy. Those are huge things, and even Japan has recently stated their recommitment and growth commitment to nuclear. France has done the same, where it looked like they might slow down on nuclear. They're now turning completely about face and don't want to have reliance on gas sources and other things for their energy. They want to be reliant on themselves. So South Korea reversed a nuclear wind down, and we see new decisions on new nuclear plants every day. The UK has been great, announcing a lot of support for nuclear new build recently, and Poland just announced that it's going to use Westinghouse and the Koreans on a couple of new plants that they have decided to build in that country, the first ones ever. So tons of positivity on that side. As far as IsoEnergy's relate to IsoEnergy and our capital structure, we continue to be in really good shape. Our cash was still about $3.3 million in the bank. We've got great support from our major shareholder, continues to be NextGen. Just right around 50% of our stock is owned by NextGen, and we continue to be in a good place as far as we've got some other tradable securities on our books to keep us going, and it looks like the market is certainly supportive of IsoEnergy and other companies that have good uranium projects to raise money when and if needed. So we're in a good position from that standpoint. We've got a great management team in place. We've got a chief financial officer who came on earlier this year from Heart Gold. He's located here in Saskatchewan. We've got a great team on the exploration support positions. Dave Thomas on this slide is a very long-term uranium explorationist, 40 years plus, really a renowned source of information that's on as an exclusive uranium consultant with IsoEnergy, who we're ecstatic to have on board, and we gain a lot of value from him. And we've got a great board. We got a lot of support again from NextGen. Lee Courier is our chairman. He's the CEO of NextGen, as many of you know. Trevor, Richard, and Chris also had a lot of experience with the NextGen, going through that story, over the last number of years, and they bring a lot of experience to the IsoEnergy story that's playing out in real time now. And we just added Peter Natupsky, another director, former investment banker. He works for Agnico Eagle, but just a ton of experience on the capital markets side of things that that can really help IsoEnergy out down the road. That's really it. I'm going to leave it there. See if there's a couple of questions we want to hit on, but just the highlights again are our discovery, very high grade. Really the only high grade discovery of its kind made in the world in the last number of years. The location, jurisdiction in Saskatchewan couldn't be better, and we've got a great team and the structure tightly held, but a lot of support from NextGen, which is really very, very helpful. So I'm just going to pull down and see what questions we do have. I'm going to try to increase some size on that so I can read them. I missed who's experimenting with. So someone just asked who's experimenting with horizontal drilling. Orano has been working on a type of drilling called Sabre for the last number of years. It's really using a horizontal drilling method to access deposits from surface, and then use kind of an offshoot of the technology used at Cigar Lake, which is jet boring. They use a high pressure water nozzle underground to erode the deposit and then backfill it with concrete, and then go beside it and do another one. They've done some test drilling. Everything I've heard, they've been very happy with the results of that. So it really is deemed to be a process, maybe for smaller deposits, but really to get access to these deposits, high grade, that don't then require all of the underground development. What's the best strategy for extracting maximum shareholder value from Hurricane? I mean, the story, like I mentioned, is yet to completely unfold. We have a great high, it's the highest grade deposit on the planet right now, 34.5%, 50 million pounds almost. We'll see how it unfolds. Like I said, if there was nothing on the other side, I think there's a great story for advancing it. Look at what the best mining method is, and advance it in this current environment, which is really supporting new development. If there is a huge discovery on the other side, then we'll have to look at what makes the best sense. I mean, that might start to introduce different mining methods that might make more sense. Certainly, partnerships, potentially with people on the other side of the border. I mean, the history of the Athabasca Basin is all about partnerships. Frankly, all of the whether it's Key Lake, MacArthur, Cigar, they've all been done with partnerships between Cameco, Orano, and others, and so that that kind of risk mitigation works. And so I think we'll have to wait and see what that looks like. But in the meantime, we'll take some steps forward with Hurricane. We'll start looking from a very high level kind of concept study, what would be the best mining methods. How do you address some of the mining against that border in such cases the other side is not doing any work, and we'll advance it that way. When NextGen divested, what was the initial price? So they haven't divested. They put they spun out the company. They continue to own 50%. So they are our major shareholders. We work very closely with NextGen. It's a great partnership. Not only gives us as a junior company a little bit, I'd say, more stability than a lot of other juniors. Not just on the financial side, but also strategically, administratively. Like, we work very closely, and to the extent ISO is lacking in something in one of those areas, they're very interested and able to provide us some backup on some of those things that because they're obviously very interested in the success of the company. So they continue to be a major shareholder. Yeah, do we expect a raise over the next 6 to 12 months? Again, we've got enough money certainly to keep us through the end of the year. We have access to other tradable securities in our treasury that keep us in good shape. That we do have other access to capital there as needed. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll look for the right time that makes sense for us to go to the market. We'll watch. There's certainly interest. There's people that reach out all the time, and certainly there seems to be an active investor community that's interested in supporting good new uranium companies. So yeah, we'll just keep an eye on it and make sure that we have the capital that we need in place to do the work we want to do, which is continue to advance Hurricane and also the exploration work that I talked a little bit about today. I think I'm probably maybe even over time a little bit, so I think I'll wrap it up